I don't know, can I have a show of hands? Anyone who thought they followed the important parts of the story all the way through? Oh, well, that's an improvement over last time. Okay.
How can you not understand that? It's really clear.
Oh, thank you. But I think last time we didn't. Last time it was much faster and didn't have so much voice. I was trying to avoid voiceover. Were you ever in any doubt about who was who? Yes. Okay.
One time where she says the suicide attempt made no difference. She was still his lover. I didn't know whether that was
the
her,
one who had the suicide attempt.
Because at that point, the sister had won.
Yeah.
And it was so she had had a sexual relationship.
So the woman
hadn't.
who's the main character in the story is the one with the long hair.
Yeah.
Who has the relationship with her father.
Yeah.
But that wasn't clear at that point.
At that point, who was who?
Okay, that's useful. Thank you.
There's an ambiguity about. It was a dawning realisation that it was a relationship with the father.
Right.
But I think that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doubt and dawning, that's that worked. But it was unclear, but it felt right that it was unclear.
Sorry.
I remember watching your one before.
Yeah.
And I think this one's a lot more clearer.
Yeah.
Before it was kind of confusing on who the guy was.
Yeah.
Like the father.
Was it the present guy? Was it the father? Yeah.
This is a lot more defined. Like you know when it's the father, and you know when it's him.
Thank goodness. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it was a lot more clear.
Thanks. It was incredibly helpful last time, so thank you for bearing with me. How about the pacing? How did the pacing seem to people?
It's good.
It was all right. Yeah.
I don't mean to disagree with Rick.
Yeah, please.
For me, when you said at the start that you felt that it was a bit too evenly paced,
Yeah.
I expected you to be wrong about that, but I don't think you
I
are.
was right. No, I'm always right.
When loads of people say, I think it's too evenly paced, and that just means that it's sort of a story from start to finish. And I feel that that's mostly the case with the story.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, just from the way I viewed this and personal opinion and all that, this has been. I think the animation is what's almost too evenly paced.
Yeah.
The story pacing, I think, is perfect. I think that works really well. It's very slow, kind of has this real ominous vibe, but the animation always maintains the same kind of speed.
Yeah,
and a couple of moments of, especially in the middle of that, like the end of the first section before you start the retelling of the girl's childhood, that first bit, something to just edge that along could be really helpful.
Right, that's really. Actually, I'm going to write this. Are you filming this?
I'm filming all
this.
this.
Excellent. So I'm going to take notes when
I thought there was a point when it starts to go quite abstract. I think you see ribs and so on, and I kind of expected. I did feel that perhaps in some of the more abstract sections it might accelerate. But
interesting. Right.
I felt that actually worked very well in this constant speed, but it could have been made even better with a little bit more variety, perhaps in a couple of places. Because it's quite a long film, and I think it could accelerate and then decelerate again.
It's the first time I've ever worked on anything as long as this, so it's weirdly, like my films have been like 11 minutes, and it's weirdly a lot longer.
But it doesn't feel
that's great.
Yeah.
It doesn't. The soundtrack could do with you could have a lot more variety in the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It feels like it's quite constant with that sort of high pitched.
Yeah, that was my note about the soundtrack. It was it's quite just everything's like doomy and ominous all the way through.
I think because it's quite a heavy subject, you could actually kind of counterpoint that with almost I don't know, quite happy music at some point.
I was watching it through this time and thinking it needs a few laughs,
Well, don't have that. I don't know about laughs, but I just think
no,
the
you're
music
right.
could be like, you know, like when they're in the bar and she's
Yeah, yeah.
dancing. It could be ABBA or something.
Yeah, that's right.
I just found the very last bit here just slightly confusing about who was in the car and what was going on. I wasn't quite sure.
Okay.
After the
Anyone
New
else
York
confused
bit,
about that? Yeah. Okay.
just that.
That's
I wasn't
good to
sure
know.
who that
I
was
read
or
it
what that
as a
was.
cycle being continued.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
One
It's a
at the
cycle.
moment that the sister went off the roof.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand.
We didn't come
Like
back from
something
that.
happened.
We didn't come
You're
back
telling us
from that.
something happened, but I don't know what it was. It wasn't very clear.
The arithmetic
So-
bit was also, now that I think about it, sorry, the arithmetic of like, I did the arithmetic, they were 37. What was that?
What
What
was
did that
Yeah.
37?
That's a quarrel I've had with the guy I'm working with, who's the writer, whose voice that is. Yeah, that's good. I'll tell him that. Thank you.
Is there more, or is this the end?
That's as much as I've got so far,
But
and that's as much of the story as there is. That's as much as we know of the story. So if I just quickly say that what's kind of interesting to me as much as anything, you know, I got sort of hooked by this story and I started telling it, and yesterday my daughter said, why are you telling this story? It's horrible. I'd be just as happy not knowing this story, which I think is a really good question. A few things fascinate me about the story. One is the way that my friend, it's a very male telling of a very female story, and it's like Chinese whispers. This is what she told him about her experience, it's what he told me, and it's what I'm telling you. And it's been, you know, and how reliable is he as a narrator, how reliable is she? One little thing really interested me, because I mean he told me this story, and you know, it's very much her telling of the story was very much that the girls seduced the father. He, you know, they just were totally obsessed with him. They seduced him, and that it was all their fault. That it was wonderful and beautiful. She wouldn't change a thing. And there was, you know, her mother was cold. And did you get a sense of who the mother was? I mean, was the mother present for you at all?
No, I was thinking that as well.
Yeah.
Only in one scene,
Yeah.
but not before that. I was actually thinking, who is the mother?
Yeah.
What's the mother's role? Where is she?
We need to see more of the mother, don't we? I think.
What
Yeah.
makes you wonder?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going on?
So very interesting. So presumably this all happened in the 70s, the original story, and somebody gave me this book by a psychologist written in 1981 about father-daughter incest, talking about how, you know, the ideas about father-daughter incest were just changing, and the prevailing wisdom among the psychotherapeutic community was that if a patient told them that they'd had an incestuous relationship with their father, it was almost sure to be fantasy. That was the first thing. If it wasn't fantasy, it was always the daughter who'd started it. It was always the daughter's fault, and there was always a cold, rejecting mother, and that if it did happen, it didn't do anyone any harm anyway. So I'm kind of fascinated about how this girl's telling of the story has kind of absorbed the prevailing attitudes to father-daughter incest at that time, and that, you know, if this was happening now, I wonder what different stories she would tell herself. So I'm kind of interested in it as storytelling, of her telling the story to herself, her telling the story to the man, him telling the story to me, and it, you know, it's just a little bit creepy. It's like he's just a little bit too interested in this story. And so those are the kind of echoes that I'm kind of hoping to reflect on and frame the story with in some way, which is...
You want to historicise incest then? You want to historicise the...
well, she's self-historicised, you know, her internal story is a very time-specific one,
Yeah.
I think.
But that, you don't particularly get the sense from this
In
film,
this film,
as
no,
it stands.
not as it stands, no. No. I'm sorry.
I find it really interesting that it's said in a male voice. So I understand why it starts in the male voice.
Yeah.
And then at one point when we were in her history, my brain asked myself, why is this a man's voice?
Yeah.
Why are we hearing this woman's experience of what is rape, essentially, in a man's voice? And then I thought back and I've just seen a guy talking and it's him.
Yeah.
And I think from what you're saying, it's actually really interesting that it is a very female-centric story. It's a woman's story of something that clearly affected her very strongly, and yet we're hearing it in a male voice, and what impact that has on the telling of the story itself, because historically, even though they're female stories, we hear them from the perspective of a man, and like you were saying, from the period of time that this probably happened, and how it wasn't the man's fault and it was always the woman. That's a very male-centric way of telling that narrative. Is it a particular choice to have it all in a male voice, or is it just because it's the man retelling the story?
I don't know the woman, I know the man. You know, that's what. I don't know. I only have the man's point of view of it, so that's what I'm working with. It's kind of tough. And sometimes he talks kind of in her voice, but whether it would be better to have a woman narrator in some way, but it's really...
I think if it is tied into all of those ideas of psychology, I think it's actually a really interesting layering of having a male voice telling a male perspective of a female experience, but that is perhaps nuanced by male narrative that affected the woman at the time. It's like, oh, there's stuff going on, but maybe it's just me. Maybe it trying to like make those layers more evident, so that people get that.
I was thinking maybe if the image didn't, if the image contradicted sometimes or left me a little more confused about what he was saying, I'd get the idea, because I don't right now understand this layering.
That's right. Well, this is one of the complications as a filmmaker, in that I was trying to start it off keeping it complex, and of course no one could tell what the hell was going on. So one thought I had was that maybe, you know, having told the story, I can then go rattle them on and back and show some of the scenes from a different point of view, or, you know, like a different reality of them somehow.
Perhaps. And this is a very perhaps. Because it's a male telling the story, and she's romanticised her past as well. But actually it's a very violent thing that happened to her. Maybe the imagery is too soft. Maybe the imagery is too romantic. And having this contradiction of a man in a very calm voice telling a story that is romanticised and was almost like a fetish of like, oh, a young woman and an older man, and if it's a father-daughter relationship, it doesn't matter. But actually having much more violent, and maybe that's where the pacing comes in as well, and you start having this flashback section where the sister sees something and actually it's not lovely, and it's not like, oh, this is my dad, and I look, it's like, no, this is horrible, and this is awful, and that is what drives the sister to commit such an act as throwing a hairdryer into a bath. We start getting on edge, which almost sets us up for the rest of the film feeling uncomfortable. I feel like we're too at ease with the fact that she is having a sexual relationship with her father.
I had a thought about that, and it seems to be very closely associated with a sort of doctor's perspective, sort of, I can see your body and it doesn't shock me. And that's the sort of tone I get from it. But I think I was quite shocked by how there was no sort of commentary, not even internal commentary, because it is his monologue, right? Or a soliloquy sort of thing. But I mean, if you were to provide some sort of mechanism where he can have a pathway for empathising with an incest narrative, I mean, often people end up with so that I remember a colleague of mine who didn't have any male siblings being obsessed by that type of incest porn, but I couldn't understand it at all. I've got male and female siblings, and it didn't connect for me. But like, if there's some sort of mechanism about his context where he can have a pathway for initially empathising, but then their paths split over those 20 years, where the girl in question enters into a sort of denial, and he's in a sort of denial perspective where she doesn't want to acknowledge her own 12-year-old daughter reenacting this, and then he's sort of living in the reality and quite sad about it. I mean, I just there's quite maybe some room for his troubled perspective having a presence in it, not just this clinical, I'm just a sort of shape of a man.
I think it's really interesting what you say about the doctor's perspective, you know, the non-judgmental doctor's sort of objective perspective. I think that's exactly the viewpoint he's taking, and he doesn't want to be judged. He doesn't want to make a judgmental film that says this is bad. You know, this is again one of the problems with collaborating, you know, that you know, we don't have the same idea of the film at all. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, me again. I would argue, just on the back of trying to incorporate more of the narrator's perspective on it, I feel like this film is very much about the woman.
Yeah.
I agree.
And if you start having the male narrator impact on us by the way he's perceiving the woman, you're turning it back and making it about the man who's telling the story. Whereas if you tell it, feel free to disagree, obviously this is totally fine. If you tell it in a very matter-of-fact way, you're still maintaining this understanding that this is a horrific event that happened to a woman, even though it's in a man's voice. And I think that potentially is something that needs to be very carefully trodden. So I personally would argue that staying away from having the male voice sort of influences at all would be...
Well, except it's his voice,
Is there possibly a sort of, I don't want to say halfway house, I'm more towards the, you know, this is a story side of things, but is that the thing that occurred to me sort of while I was watching it, but much more since we've had this discussion, especially on your point. Could you possibly straddle this divide and make this idea of the sort of perspective difference much more clear by layering voiceovers? So you would have, for the female sections, both a man and the woman speaking at the same time, and then you could use this potentially as a narrative device where the voices actually diverge and say something different at the same time. Because I feel like if there is anything about this and about what you've said about this piece, it's potentially that it's actually almost too straightforward at the moment. And I would love to see, like, there's a violence in the animation, that sort of interlacing effect at the side of some of the
that's something to do with the way I
exported it. That.
I'll carefully draw that in for you.
It's wonderful. That to me screams there's this sort of like almost bubbling on the surface. The same effect I see in like animation boiling. So if something is like this, where it builds and you have these two conflicting voices, that to me would feel like a very complete narrative picture.
Oh, interesting.
I also argue that because you're fascinated by the neutral voiceover, and what an amazing voice, actually. I was mesmerized hearing him. So it has the psychological analysis on it in a neutral condition. So I think you keep that because you like it, and I also loved it. And the only thing that I wanted to say, because we see 2 times the suicide of the sister.
You're first the attempt, and then she manages
the
it.
Second. I thought I would find it really cinematic and enough if it was like her eyes told me everything, but she told me anyway, and that's it. Because then you have the roof, and then that they were at 37 at this point, 2 major infos, and we're also going to the final of the video. And I was a bit confused there, why this important information in the end. And then a question, I don't know, if it was the father, the guy in the car, or no?
No, it was her father's dead.
Another
years ago,
guy.
this is her husband.
Alright, a new guy.
This is her husband. I mean, it says her husband
Okay, sorry.
So, I mean, it's really important that you say this, and it seems like by the end people are sort of... I think it seems like the shift between the the sister going off the roof and then coming back to reality, that's not kind of work. Thanks for those thoughts. Can I hold your thoughts, and maybe we'll have a drink afterwards and you can tell me more. I have one final animator question. There's a lot of going backwards and forwards in time, which I've kind of rather heavy-handedly signalled with a photo frame as you go back into the flashback, and then as you come back there's a sort of sound that's meant to signal coming back into real time. Were you ever confused about where we were in time? That's great. Thank you.
I think it was useful sometimes not being too sure and being able to investigate. It gave room for us, for me to really explore it. Right. I didn't actually realise it was a photo frame. I just thought, why is there a box?
Why is there a box? Okay.
I think some ambiguity is good. It's not it's not a slideshow to a narration. It's an embellishment. It's two things running alongside.
Yeah.
Life isn't all completely explained. And it was only with hindsight that I worked out a particular section of the film, and I quite like that. You're being immersed in it, and life is complicated, but gradually you build up a picture. I like the fact that it wasn't all explained.
Okay. I think we should probably stop there because people want to chat and drink.
I'm afraid so, yes.
But thank you very, very much. I mean, I can't tell you how useful this is and how nourishing. I mean, I guess some of you know what it's like to work on a film absolutely on your own. I mean, there's the guy I'm working with, but he's in New York, and it's just been going on too long. I don't know what I'm making. So to give me your eyes on it is a real gift. So thank you very, very much.
Can we have a big round of applause for Caroline and for Ruth?